beneath the waves, where light vanishes and pressure crushes steel, lie the veins of our digital world. Stretching silently across the ocean floor, unnoticed by nearly everyone, yet carrying the heartbeat of modern life. Welcome to UncoverTime, where history isn't buried, it's cabled. Where power doesn't roar, it hums. Today, we dive beneath the myth of the cloud and follow the quiet empires that control your clicks, your calls, and your world. Because the truth doesn't live in the sky, it's hidden under the sea. We speak of the cloud like it floats above us, invisible and ethereal. But the truth is dirtier, colder, and far more human. It's made of fiber optic strands buried in trenches, soldered by men in ships, and owned by names you'll never see in a web browser. Every photo you upload, every tearful voice message, every confession typed at 2 a.m., they all travel not through the sky, but through glass threads thinner than a hair, guarded by corporations and cradled by salt and silence. There is no such thing as a neutral cable. Every route chosen, every port linked, every contract signed reflects a decision about who deserves speed, who gets delay, who watches, and who stays blind. These cables do not serve nations. They serve contracts, ownership stakes, and data monopolies. They do not wave flags, they sign NDAs. In the empire of the internet, sovereignty isn't earned by elections or revolutions. It's leased by the terabyte and defended by latency. Google doesn't just know what you search, it knows how fast your request travels across the Atlantic because it owns the road. Meta doesn't just show you the news, it built the bridge that brings it from Lagos to Lisbon, from Kandahar to New York, from your fingertips to its profits. So next time you click accept all, pause. Not because cookies are scary, but because consent in this age is silent, default, and buried beneath 6 miles of water. The undersea cable empire does not scream, it hums. And in that hum lies the rhythm of power, one pulse of light at a time. They say information wants to be free, but freedom has a cost. And today, it is measured in cable length, server access, and geopolitical silence. Every map of the world is a lie if it doesn't show the invisible strings pulling us all. The strings that wrap continents in contracts and code. There's a cable between New York and London that carries more money per second than any highway on Earth. And yet, no one has ever seen it. Finance flows in light pulses now, not briefcases, not banks. And the firms that trade milliseconds faster earn billions more. This is not science fiction. This is the ocean's quiet economy, where speed is sovereignty and fiber is king. We scroll with the illusion of freedom, unaware that a handful of tech giants have laid their own digital railroads, not for us to explore, but for us to be delivered. Amazon doesn't just deliver to your door, it delivers your voice commands across the Pacific on its own cables straight to its cloud. Google doesn't just search for you, it searches through cables it owns and it controls, all in the name of efficiency, all in the shadow of control. Meta builds its empire not on friendships, but on fibers, wrapping the world in likes, shares, and surveillance that pulses at the speed of thought. There is a myth that governments rule the internet, but the reality is simpler and more dangerous. Whoever owns the cables owns the future. Africa is being rewired, not by revolutions, but by corporations. And every cable laid along its coasts carries both opportunity and dependency. The 2 Africa cable, built by Meta and friends, promises connection. But it also promises a future where all roads lead to Menlo Park. We call it expanding access. But behind the public good is a quiet question. Who controls the gate when all the gates are digital? In the 19th century, empires built railroads into colonies. In the 21st, they lay cables beneath their shores. And this time, the cargo is mines. China, too, has entered the trench, laying cables through Asia and Africa with steel resolve and encrypted intent. The digital Silk Road is not a metaphor. It is a map of ambition, of submarine routes that bind the developing world to Beijing's routers and rules. What once was a maritime contest of ships and sailors is now a silent race of engineers and contracts. One not with guns, but with data flows. And the seas, once home to pirates and explorers, are now ruled by legal agreements and fiber optics. Patrolled not by navies, but by packet inspection. The ocean floor has become a battleground, not for territory, but for throughput, latency, and sovereignty, measured in milliseconds. This is the new geopolitics. Who bends the cable shapes the conversation. Who monitors the route controls the truth. In this empire, the borders are not drawn with ink, but with light, and the rulers are not kings, but cables. A single cable cut near Alexandria once slowed the entire Middle East, not with violence, but with silence. It didn't take missiles, or hackers, or sanctions. Just a ship anchor dropped too deep, and millions were left staring at frozen screens. No shots fired, yet banking systems stalled, markets trembled, and voices vanished. The fragility of our strength exposed in a splash. This is the part of the internet you were never meant to see, the part that lies beneath, that cannot be rebooted or refreshed. And while we fear viruses and passwords and firewalls, the real threat lies 6 miles down, where steel meets salt and no laws apply. Undersea cables are not protected by military bases. They are guarded by obscurity, and sometimes by nothing at all. There are divers in the world, few trained and anonymous, who can splice a live cable in pitch-black waters while the world scrolls on. But there are also submarines, quiet and watching, capable not just of cutting a line, but of tapping it, whispering secrets into waiting ears. This is not speculation. During the Cold War, Operation Ivy Bells proved it was possible and maybe inevitable. The NSA tapped Soviet cables on the ocean floor, listening not through satellites, but through copper and current, shadows and silence. And if they did it then, what do they do now? When data means power, and every click leaves a trace, nations now fund cable-laying missions, not only for commerce, but for security, for spying, for dominance. The U.S. has maps the public will never see. Redland routes, protected zones, and ghost networks invisible even to Google Earth. Russia has deep-sea vessels with robotic arms, designed to manipulate or destroy cables in the dark, not to start wars, but to end conversations. The future may not be a cyber-attic through a screen. It may begin with a diver's knife, slicing through the veins of the modern world. What happens when the world disconnects? Not socially, but physically. What happens when the digital heartbeat, the one you don't hear but rely on, suddenly stops? When the pulses that carry our words, our money, our breath across oceans go silent. When the lines go silent and there is no check your connection, because the connection no longer exists. The question is not if this will happen, but who will decide when. In a world built on speed, the slowest moment is deadly, and milliseconds lost in cable damage can mean millions lost in trade. Every streaming video, every real-time trade, every battlefield drone, all depend on cables thinner than your pinky. And yet, the companies who control these cables are named not in headlines, but in footnotes, filings, and forgotten contracts. NEC, Subcom, Alcatel submarine networks. These are the architects of the modern world's invisible foundation. And behind them stand the giants: Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft. Not just building platforms, but plumbing. They do not wait for governments to act. They send ships, they write code, they lay glass across the seabed. Their logic is simple. Why rent a highway when you can own the road? And once you own the road, you decide the tolls, the priority lanes, the speed limits, the watchers at every junction. This is not surveillance by accident. It is infrastructure by design. And every click we make becomes not just data, but direction, fueling the next cable, the next route, the next empire. But unlike oil or gold, data is not dug from the earth. It is given freely, endlessly, and often unknowingly. We are not just users of the internet. We are its cargo, its product, its fuel. Every heartbeat monitored by a smartwatch, every voice asked of Alexa, every route mapped by GPS, all of it riding the wires beneath the sea. And the deeper the data goes, the less control we have over it, lost in algorithms, contracts, and foreign ports. In this world, sovereignty is blurred, not between nations, but between governments and corporations. Who do you call when a cable fails and the bank shuts down? Your senator or your service provider? When the internet was born, it was a government project, a military shield against nuclear war. Today, it is a corporate web, a mirror of our wants, built not to protect, but to predict. And prediction is power. To know what we want before we ask, where we'll go before we arrive, who we'll trust before we meet. This is not about connection anymore. This is about control, and cables are the crown. But there is a challenge arising, not from the ocean floor, but from the sky. Its name is Starlink, a constellation of thousands of low-orbit satellites built by SpaceX, promising to beam the internet from above. To the disconnected, Starlink feels like salvation. Internet in war zones, on mountaintops, across deserts, no cable required. In Ukraine, when cables were cut and power grids went dark, it was Starlink that kept drones flying and messages moving. But Starlink is not neutral. It is owned, directed, and turned on or off at the will of a single company. This is not the democratization of the internet. It is its privatization by orbit. One man's decision can determine the digital fate of a nation, not through policy, but through firmware updates. Starlink does not replace cables. It supplements them, supports them, and in some cases bypasses the powers that once relied on trench and wire. But every satellite still speaks to a ground station, and those stations still rely on terrestrial networks, many connected by undersea cables. So even the stars are tethered, not to space, but to Earth, to ports, to politics, to infrastructure still ruled by glass and current. This is the paradox. We dream of wireless freedom, yet the web remains a chain anchored to physical roots, owned by invisible hands. Cables are the blood vessels of the digital body, satellites its nerves, and like any body, whoever controls the brain controls the rest. There is no such thing as a truly global internet. Only networks shaped by law, capital, geography, and power. China builds its own great firewall. Russia walls itself off in digital bunkers. The West exports platforms in the name of openness, but reaps data in return. And between these powers stretch the cables, passing through choke points monitored by satellites, guarded by treaties that are rarely honored when war begins. The next great conflict may not begin with bombs, but with a blackout, the kind that starts at sea in silence, unnoticed, until it's too late. Because when the cables go dark, the world goes blind. Finance stops, defense crumbles, and chaos fills the void. We call this the information age. But information does not flow freely. It flows where allowed, monitored, metered, monetized. We were told the internet would bring equality, but instead, it has mirrored our oldest hierarchies. Speed for the rich, delay for the poor, visibility for the watched. It was meant to liberate, yet it has bound us tighter than ever in loops of convenience, dependence, and distraction. The question is not whether we are connected. The question is who connects us and to what end. A world run on cables is not a free world. It is a world of contracts, latency, and quiet domination. So next time your screen lights up, ask yourself, whose signal is this? Whose cable carried it? Whose hands built the road beneath your words? Ask, what is traded for your speed, and what is stolen in the name of service? Ask why silence falls when a cable is cut, and who thrives in that silence. Because the internet is not in the air, not in the sky, not in the cloud. It is in the trench, in the wire, in the world below. It does not run on magic. It runs on power. And power, like data, always flows to those who understand it best and hide it well. In a world full of watchers, awareness is the first act of freedom. And the first step to seeing clearly is to look below the surface, where cables crawl like roots through the ocean, and empires are born in silence. Thank you for watching UncoverTime. If this journey beneath the surface opened your eyes, share it. Subscribe to stay aware. Like if you've ever felt your screen knows more than it shows. And remember, the next time your connection feels instant, ask who's holding the wire.